Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. My name is Octoman, and this is another video about a request. In this case, how to create a target Crosshair. So let's assume you are creating a shoot or a fighter game, and a lot of fighters are flying through the scene or whatever, and you want to auto target them, or probably want to use raycasting to target them. Then you're absolutely able to do so, but you also want to highlight probably how these are that this particular one is going to be the one you are aiming for. So what you also want to do is in your in the camera you want to only actually activate this graphic about the crosshair whenever they are only in on screen, and of course if there even is one on screen. So we need to check several things, several behaviors, and also we might want to we might go and put in something like where you can switch targets which are currently on screen. It well depends. Okay, so let's get started. First, I'm gonna show you what I've done so far, or actually prepared, which isn't really too much. So I created this little crosshair over here, and I created a canvas. I set the canvas to scale with screen size, so I make sure this is not reducing its size automatically, but is still having the same size when you can see, or what you can see later on in the game view, that it is not going to shrink down too much. You can scale this already until you are actually happy with the size of that crosshair. So whenever we are later going into maximize on play, we want to make sure that they are keeping the same size as we want to. By the way, based on distance, for example, you can later probably also go onto these and scale them down. I don't cover this in this video because I guess it's not the point. So the point is having a crosshair image. So this is of type image. And I want to make sure that I click preserve aspect ratio. I want to make sure that however I stretch this one all over here, I want to preserve the aspect ratio of the image. So that's basically everything I have done so far. Once again, just a canvas to be scale with screen size and the canvas scaler. This is important, and that's pretty much everything for now. Okay, so let's get into it. Let's assume we have an enemy. Or even two or three, doesn't really matter. So I have a cube, and this cube is going to be reset to 0, 0, 0, which is going to be here. And now what I can do is I can already tag this cube to be an enemy. So make sure you make use of it. I have the target already from the Homing Missile stuffs here, so I'm gonna make use of it. You can target your enemies however you like, and please, once again, name it enemy, name it target, but don't forget you need to put all of that later on into your scripts. Okay, so let's assume we have this particular cube over here. We want to make sure that this crosshair is following this cube over the screen wherever it is flying around, whatever. Meanwhile, it is doing so, and meanwhile, it is on screen. When it is off screen, we want to deactivate crosshair. In this case, also, we want to make sure that we are always only moving inside the canvas. And that's what we're going to take care of. And I will go and remove my little stuff I've used before testing or for testing at all. So what we can do is we can, by code, for example, let the cube move around on the screen, or we just go and animate this pretty quick so we can see what's going on. So I go to my animation window and create a new animation. I deleted mine already, so no worries about this. Move around. We don't care. I don't really care about where this is going to be and how this is going to move. It's just for showcasing you what the crosshair is going to do later on screen. Okay, so at second one, I probably want to double click this so I can see more what's going on. Go to move. And now I can move this thing around this cube. I can move it backwards, forwards. I want to make sure that I record this. So once again, this is not an animation tutorial. This is a crosshair tutorial. So I move this. Let's see where I can bring this to be like outside of the screen. So I'm probably moving this over here. Then I scroll out a bit to second 2. I probably want to bring this maybe a bit backwards, then to the left over there. You can see this now. And the third one, I maybe want to bring this I don't know, where it has been or something like that. So I want to make sure that it is flying outside the screen so we can see if the system actually works. Okay, so and the last screen, it maybe one gonna copy these. I guess I can just Control C these keys. Gonna scroll out a bit, and at second 4, I probably bring this back. Yes, I can do this. So when I play this now, it is like moving around through the scene, and we can later on check what the crosshair is going to do over here. Once again, nothing fancy at all. So gonna stop this recording since I'm done with that. So the cube, when I press play, will automatically, move to the position I just set there. Once again, nothing fancy. Okay, let's go into Crosshair. I want to create a script which I put in onto the canvas or on any other game object. Basically, doesn't matter. It just needs to be in the scene. Control C, or I just create a C# script over here. I name it maybe a lock on system or something. I don't know. You can also name it auto log. Well, it's not an auto log on, it's just a log on in this case, because I'm gonna implement a key to press to do this logging on. Actually, to not going to do this automatically all over the time. Okay, so what do we need is, first we of course need to open this one in Mono Develop or Visual Studio. I get rid of nothing for the moment. So what we need to do is we need to have a bool, which is telling us if we have locked something or not. If that is false, we can lock something. Otherwise, we're gonna do, actually, we need to make sure that we unlock this or whatever. So we need to have a public game object, which is representing our crosshair. This is going to be, we just drag it in. That's why we are doing this one public. We can also do automatically adding these things, but well, we don't need to. Then we have a transform, which is going to be our target. We can also use the game object directly, but the transform in this case probably is a bit easier to set up. We keep it private since we don't need to see this on the inspector or anywhere else. Now I create a list of type game object, which is representing a list of all enemies inside the game. So I name it enemies in game. We need to, I may not go into and update the list if an enemy dies, but I guess you get the deal. Meanwhile, we are writing that. So, and we need to say, okay, we create a new list of type game object over here. Then we need another list. This is going to be the list which is going to contain all selectable or all visible enemies. So enemies on screen, for example. And of course, we need to say we initialize that as new list of type game object, open close parentheses, close the line with a semicolon. Okay, so in start, we want to find at first all enemies in game. So we can later on, you can update this by calling a specific function, whatever. It's up to you once again. So I create a game object array. You want to update probably this list whenever new enemies popping up or whatever in your game. Doesn't really matter. So I create a game object array, and I'm gonna put in or name all enemies. Enemies is equal to, and then now we want to find all instances or all enemies which have the target tag. So we say GameObject.find game objects. Make sure that you use objects with the S over here. Objects with tag. And now we need to declare the tag. In my case, it's target. So if you have an enemy tag, feel free to use that. Now we loop through the complete array and say we can make use of a for or for each. I guess we're going to make a for each here. So for each, and open close parentheses, we're gonna need to declare the type first, game object. I name it E. E stands for enemy in all enemies, which is going to be the array we just created beforehand by looking through the complete scene. We want to add all the possible enemies. Oh, there's a typo. Into the enemies in-game list. So we have a connection to all possible enemies. So we can basically loop through all the enemies. Meanwhile, they're flying around or doing stuff, whatever. Keep them in the list. And then we can check if they are coming inside our frustum of the camera or just inside the view, whatever. So what we need to do is we need to add all of these inside or from the array to our list. So we can say enemies in game dot add. So we want to add them to the list enemies in game by looping through with a for each. And what do we want to add? We want to add the game object E we are currently looping through. Okay, so what we also want to set is the crosshair dot set active to be false. So whenever we don't see anything, or whenever we are starting the game, we want to make sure that we deactivate this particular crosshair. And we're gonna activate this once and whenever we find something on screen. Okay, now we want to check for the targets. So first off, we need to make sure that we have at least one enemy inside the game. So that's what we need to check at first. So if enemies InGame.count is bigger than 0, meaning we have at least one inside the list, only then we want to do all of that stuff. By the way, doing this in update might not be cool. Probably want to put this into a coroutine or an invoke repeating or something to regularly check like once a second or so if there are still enemies left or not. Otherwise, the game is over and so on and so forth. So, but once again, we don't go over and cover everything about destroying and so on. So what we want to do is we want to loop through all possible or all enemies in game. So we say enemies in game dot count is going to be the part of the for loop. Once again, a for loop is looping through all instances or all parts inside the list we are going to make use of. I'm going to use a list because it is dynamic, so whenever an enemy gets destroyed, it is automatically updating the length of the list and destroying empty fields. So that's, and also we can put in new enemies into the list anytime we are spawning one or whatever. So at first, once again, we'll loop through that until we are reaching the end of the enemies in game list. That's the word. Now we want to actually check where the enemy position is inside the world. So I I create a vector where I want to store this enemy, and I call this enemy position. And now what we want to do is we want to take our camera.main, which is going to be my main camera. You can also declare your own camera later on if you like to, like by dragging it into if you have multiple cameras or whatever. And what we want to check here is the world to viewpoint or viewport point, this one. So camera.main.world to world to viewpoint, and we need to put in a vector position. We want to store in this enemy vector. What we want to do is we want to say enemies in game, that's the one we are currently looping through, with the letter I dot, and now we want to put in transform dot position because that's the position vector of the enemy currently somewhere in the world. Now we can check if that enemy position is anywhere in our frustum of the camera. And we can, for example, return a bool for that if we like to, or we just put it when we find it inside our enemies on screen list, if it is the case. And also, if that is not the case, we remove it from the list. So let's check the position. First, we create an if statement. Somehow some line too much. So if, first off, we need to check the enemy Z position. So enemy position dot that, if that is bigger than 0, means it is at least not behind us. And so if it is higher than 0, it is definitely in front of us, but does not mean it is inside the frustum of the camera. So if enemy position dot that is bigger than 0, so it is at least in front of us, or like from our current position on, or from the camera position on. If that is the case, because we are related to the current camera, we can also put in anything other stuff like any other object here. But camera does make sense, may make more sense, because once again we are related to the camera wherever it is. We can stick the camera to any game object, whatever. So we still can check for the camera dot main. I'm gonna tell you something about this in a moment as well. So. And what we also want to check is if enemy position.x is bigger than 0, so it is the left screen side is going to be 0, the right screen side is going to be 1. So 0, if it is higher than 0, it is inside the frustum. If it is lower than 1, it is also inside the frustum. So I need to put this in here as well. So if enemy position.x is smaller than 1, then it is like from left to right inside the frustum, because the viewpoint or the viewport always works with numbers between 0 and 1. That's why we need to have that inside the screen. Okay, so now we need to check for the y value, so between 0 and 1 on y-axis. So we say and enemy position dot y is bigger than 0 and enemy position dot y is smaller than 1. Smaller? Where's the smaller sign? Here we go. Only then we know that this enemy is going to be inside the frost room of the camera dot main, or in the main camera in this case. Cool. So if that is the case, we want to put this particular enemy into our enemies on screen list. So we say enemy dot on screen dot add open close parentheses, and what do we want to add? The currently looped through enemy in game. So enemy in game in square brackets I, because it's of type GameObject as well. Now we want to have, if that is not the case, we want to remove it from there, of course. Once again, whenever you delete stuff later on, you want to make sure that you remove both from the list if you are using this constantly. So whenever you destroy an enemy, you want to take them away from here and from here. So you don't get any null references because the enemy does not exist probably anymore, but the list is trying to access it. So what we want to do is we want to check first if that is not the case. So else if, and now we need to check if it still this enemy contains a specific enemy, which we are currently looping through. So if enemy on screen the dot contains, so some item or some enemy is still in the list, in open close parentheses, once again enemies in game in square brackets I. So if it's not inside, or if it is containing that, then we want to make sure that, I believe we need to say if it is not containing this enemy on screen dot remove add. So we want to remove it at a specific indicator. In this case, should be I. Well, probably not. Maybe we need to rewrite that part a bit. I'm not 1% sure. We're gonna see how this is working. So basically, we want to make sure if the enemy we are currently looping through is, nope, if that is containing, or if enemy contains, or enemy on enemy on screen does contain the currently looped through, but it is not like here, not inside this, then we want to make sure that we want to remove it. So as a second else if parameter, but we don't want to remove this one add. We want to remove a specific item. In this case, it's going to be enemies in game in square brackets I. That should be it, because otherwise when we try to remove something which is not there, we got a null reference once again. Okay, I guess that should be fine. Now let's enable the lock on. Once again, we can put all of that stuff into an extra function, probably put it in a coroutine or somewhere else to not keep on checking this one 60 times, 60 times a second. So, and what we want to do is I'm going to put an input here for a spacebar. So if input dot key, get key down, in open close parentheses key code dot space. So whenever I press the spacebar, I want to create a lock on for our enemy, but we can only do this if, so we need to say end not locked. So we haven't locked any enemy yet, and at least enemies on screen is bigger than 0. Otherwise it doesn't make sense, but of course we need to say dot count because we need the count of that enemy amount. Okay, so when that is the case, so when we haven't locked any other enemy and we have at least one on the screen and we press the P key, then we want to set locked on, or locked is equal to true, so we lock it on. And also what we want to do is we want to activate our crosshair. So we can say crosshair dot set active to be true. Once again, all of these can also be put into any other stuff, whatever, and any other, functions. Okay, cool. So, and now the final stuff is going to coming. So if we are locked, so that means we have found something, and we, this is going to be active basically, then we can do our target can now be set first. So we can say target is equal to enemies in game, enemies on screen. And now what I want to do is I want to pick the first one from the list. Once again, it depends on how you want to do that. And I choose its transform, because target is of type transform. And that's what I need to do or need to take now, I guess. Actually, it doesn't really matter, I believe. So, and what we need to do is we need now to place the crosshair related to the world onto our canvas. And before I do this, I probably want to do an else statement here. If that is not the case, that we are setting a locked to be false. I'm not sure if that is possible. Maybe we're gonna do another input later. Like an else if statement. Else if get input. So when I probably press again, else if input dot get key down and open close parentheses key code dot space. Oh, what's that? Key code dot space. Then I probably want to unlock it. So, and it is locked already. I want set locked probably to be false. Target is going to be equal maybe to null. And we're gonna deactivate the crosshair. So crosshair.setActive is false. I don't know if that works, but I guess. So we're gonna test this out in a moment anyways. In start, once again, we deactivate the crosshair and so on and so forth. So now we want to move the crosshair. So we can say crosshair.transform dot position. So we reposition our crosshair based on the camera's position on to the screen point. So we actually transfer the world point to the screen point into our canvas. So we say camera dot main dot world to screen point. World to, where is it? World to screen point, this one. And it is related to the current target we are aiming for. So target dot, I guess, position needs to be done here. So don't forget to save the script. I know it's a lot of code, but basically we're gonna do some simplified stuff. By the way, we can also switch through enemies if there are more. We're gonna try that out, I guess. And what I mean by this is we can put another input here. If input dot get key down, open close parentheses, key code. I don't know. What do we need? What do we use here? X something. And locked. So if you have locked something already, or probably we also need to say if the enemies count is bigger than whatever, then we can choose the next one in the list. Meaning, but we need to protect it with an overflow something. So whenever we have reached, let's see, and if enemies in game, no, it's not in game. Enemies on screen. Enemies on screen is bigger than 0. We want to probably go to the next. Maybe we say last, or maybe an integer. It's going to be maybe the index over here is equal to. Maybe we need to put this somewhere. Like taking the index into consideration at this position over here, because otherwise it doesn't really make sense. So I gonna create an integer of index over here and use the 0 usually, and in here I can probably or hopefully yeah, I can take the index over here, whatever the current selected index is, and we're gonna say here we increment index because that's the one, oops, we are actually looping through, or actually maybe switching through. Like we're gonna increment the index, and if now index is bigger than the enemies on screen dot count, then we want to set the index back to 0. So index is equal to 0. I guess that should help. If not, we're gonna need to set this count to be -1 or something over here. We'll see in just a second. So let's see what the code is going to give us. By the way, we need to go to the canvas first and of course drag our lock-on system onto the canvas or anywhere else. This cannot be applied, of course, because we need to say enemies on screen dot count needs to be bigger than 0 because we need to count them up. Okay, and let's see if the problem gets away after the compiler is done running, of course. Looks good. So I go to the canvas, drag on my lock-on system onto the canvas. And there we go. Now I want to drag the crosshair image onto here into the slot of that. So the crosshair can be set automatically. Now when I press play, I deactivate the crosshair. As you can see, I have paused it and nothing happens. That's funny. We don't see it because we haven't pressed space, I believe. So when we now press play, and of course I'm gonna hit space, I'm gonna see the crosshair is next to the screen, and whenever this is entering over here, like when it is like going outwards. Oh, I was a bit too slow. Hopefully it's deactivating itself. So let's see what's going on in this maximize on play when it's turned off. So once again, I press space. Then I see the crosshair, and in here, usually it shouldn't be active. But on the other hand, actually, it doesn't really matter if it stays active because you don't see this outside of the screen anyways. And that's not a good one. So probably we're gonna need to set a locked to be false whenever there is no enemy on screen as well. So maybe say locked is equal to false, something like that. And if that is not, or if we are not locked, we probably want to deactivate the crosshair as well. Or we're gonna try, what I also want to try is, of course, hi Joe, thanks a lot for tuning in. Anyhow, my screen froze. Oh, hi Andrew, sorry to see your message quite late, but I had an overlay. So when I press space, this stuff is going to be here, and now it's deactivating itself. So locked is going to be disabled, and the crosshair will stay here because the enemy just made it outside of the screen. When I deactivate it by holding down once again or pressing the space bar, it works, but it deactivates itself whenever the enemy is not in the list anymore, which is okay. So and it gets removed anyways. I'm not 1% sure why it is still taking the position of the on screen whenever this is not going to be locked. However, I want to create another cube which is not related to the other one and not animated to check if we are actually able to switch between enemies, like with our X key. Gonna move this a bit here to the side, a bit in the bottom, so we can probably see this easier. I guess we have to be a bit fast in switching because the other movement or the other object switch is quite good. Because I forgot to set this one as being a target. Should now work, hopefully. So as you can see, this one was the first one, but you can also deactivate it by hitting the space bar several times. And also when the other one is inside the screen, I should be able to switch, but I can't. I can't. Why is that so? we're gonna implement or increment index. Maybe I'm gonna make this list pretty much quick. At least enemies on screen. I probably want to make this public so I can debug any problems if there are any. Probably not. I want to see if they are updating correctly whenever this is flying outside, that it is still or not anymore in the enemies list. That's what I want to know first. So I need to select my canvas so I can see the list of all enemies. My enemies on screen. Whoa, they're gonna get added. So I believe we need to make sure that enemies on screen only added once. So probably if we are on screen and not enemies on screen dot contains the currently one. Nope. Enemy list dot contains open close parentheses the current loop through enemy in game. So enemy in game dot no, what is it? Square brackets I. Are we looping here already? Oh, screen is too small. Let me check. Yes. So if we are not containing this one only, then we want to put it into the list. Otherwise, we have a continuously filling up a list, which is not what we want, I guess. So it should not be higher than 2 whenever 2 objects are inside the list. And now it's switching back and forth. That's funny. It's like refilling itself, but one of these is already on screen. So something is strange here. Enemies in game. We're gonna target that. Maybe we can, no, we cannot do this before. So they are actually updated. I believe this one here. I need to have another check over here, I guess. So something like a boolean or so, which is checking if we are on screen or not. I mean, I don't care about locked, but this one means it always removes it like every now and then or every step. So I believe I make a bool check or something. So we're gonna set a new bool. No. Basically, if all of that does not happen in the second turn. So basically, we would need to take this as a, well, we need to return something to be true or false based on this input. Bool is on screen, I don't know, is equal to, and then we need to return this anyhow. I'll copy, put this into parentheses. And I believe we need to make it like so, true, question mark, false. I'm not sure if that is the right order. So now, does it need to be question mark and then colon? Well, sometimes I forgot that. Okay, so in this case, we probably want to say is on screen, and take this as an indicator. So if that is the case, then we do this. And only here we do this is if that is not on screen. So probably that helps. Hi DK, welcome to the stream. No worries, the video will be sooner or later be visible on my channel, so you can check it out later on. Or you just go back from now on and just rewatch. I believe you have like 4 hours where you can go backwards into this stream and check it out. And let's see if that is going to fix now our problem here. Yes. So this way we have a boolean which we are protecting our targets now with, and when we now press space, we're gonna have the possibility to lock this one on. Meanwhile, this other one is on. I should be able to press X, but it doesn't let me. That's not cool. So we need to figure why X does not work. Probably we do not make use of locked here. I don't know. So we increment the index, and because we are checking locked here anyways, we're taking the index. So probably I gonna check the current index here. And see what's going on next. My computer is a bit busy because once again I'm rendering stuff. Yes! So now we have an argument out of range. So we need to say here -1. So if the index is bigger than enemies on screen dot count -1, because we're starting with the index of 0. And if we say we increment this to 1, probably we're gonna need to do it different here. We'll see. If -1 doesn't work, we're gonna do something like if it is bigger or equal to, which probably doesn't make sense since index directly means that we are directly starting at 0 anyways. So yeah, and -1 doesn't work because I cannot take this away here. So we need to implement index afterwards, probably. I don't know. So we check what the current index is, and otherwise we are implementing or incrementing index, which would be something like that. If it is equal to that, or yeah, bigger or equal to, then we return it back to index. Otherwise, we increment index. Probably that works. I don't know. We'll see. So we can make our switch. So I activate that. It deactivates itself when it is leaving. Now the index did not change to be back to 0, and I guess that's a problem. So copy whenever we are unlocking. Like when we're setting locked to be true, we want to make sure that we set the index always to 0. I guess that's the problem. Because whenever he's flying outside and the index is different, like it is currently 1, then it probably doesn't work as it has to, has to work. So let's try again. And that should be everything we need to do for our target system here. So I can now have this one on. It's deactivating itself. I can press space, and still I cannot update with another X over here. So try that once again. So with a bigger or equal. Yeah, sometimes it's strange. Sometimes I don't see the tree in front of the woods. Maybe that doesn't even work as well. We'll see. There we go. Yes. So now I have the possibility to switch targets just with the X key whenever I've, of course, activated this. It doesn't seem to work always since, well, whenever it's flying outside, we need to deactivate the crosshair as well as setting target to be 0. And like here, we are removing this one anyways over here. So we want to make sure that we probably go and set the crosshair like here to be false, as well as resetting, or don't setting any target because we actually haven't locked anything anymore on the screen. So probably that fixes a problem here and there. So let's try that out again, because sometimes it seems to be stuck to the last one, or whenever he's flying outside and I try to switch, the enemies and have this one here. He's now he flew out, but I need to activate this, of course, or I can activate this. And when he's now flying out and it is now deactivated, I press space. I can instantly go into this once again. So now I believe that should be everything. And I can switch targets. Pretty cool. And if you have multiple targets, of course, you can now switch through all of these as well. Gonna bring like Control D to copy them, bring them here. And as you can see, it doesn't really matter if they are on the Z-axis far behind you or whatever. Whenever I activate it, this one is going to be the first one now in the list. And oh, that's funny. It it deactivates the crosshair whenever one is going to be outside of the list. So probably we should do this a bit different and maybe resetting the target to any other one which is actually inside the, or on screen. So probably we set, as we do here, we set any other target into that, and probably not setting locked to be false. I don't know. Well, it's hard to tell where we can go with that. Locked is equal to false. Maybe we need to have another check over here. If locked, we might want to update this one over here. So instead of doing this here and deactivating that, we need to probably do a secondary check over there to make sure the crosshair or this whatever currently looped through enemy is actually when it is leaving the screen, that we don't unlock everything over here or just get rid of the crosshair. But still, this is I believe you can figure the rest out of your own, no matter how you want to use this. Once again, sometimes people are using a raycast to point onto a target, and what they can do is then they lock the target whenever they hit it with this raycast. So basically you only need to do this, and you probably don't even need to make use of switching the targets like this. Probably you need to, or you have multiple targets you want to select. Then of course you need to you need to have more crosshairs like here to be activated or instantiated on that. So that's basically everything I wanted to cover in this video. Thanks a lot for tuning in. If you have any request, feel free to ask me, and I try to answer this now and then, depending on how huge it is. Also, feel free to check out my other tutorial videos, as well as tune into the request video tutorial, where you can basically put your own request into. If it is big, of course, it takes longer for me to make a video about it. If it is rather small and not too complex, it's probably out the next day or another day on the week, whatever. So once again, thanks a lot for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this one. Feel free to sub this video up, like it, whatever, subscribe to the channel. And of course, check out the description of the video, where I have some courses on Udemy which you can take, like full game tutorials, and also coming soon a GALAGA 3D tutorial on Udemy. So stay tuned. Thanks a lot for tuning in, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye bye.